All right, let's get going. Okay, so obviously base stealing emphasis tonight. Before we get into it, there will be a little bit of double up from last week's presentation regarding leads. I've covered leads again in this because I'm a big believer on leads being a precursor to you having the ability to be a good base stealer. There's an analogy, it's really, really hard to steal second if you've still got your foot on first. So that's why I've doubled up on the leads, but all the other stuff is relatively new. It wasn't presented last week. So first thing we're going to cover is philosophy or mentality. So for me, base stealing is a mentality, okay? Firstly, you have to want to do it, all right? If you want to be a base stealer or you want to have the ability to steal bases, you have to have the ability to want to do it, okay? A lot of people have the potential to steal bases and they don't because they have fear. They're worried about getting picked off. They're worried about getting thrown out, etc. Okay, so if you want to be a good base stealer, the first thing is the mental side of it. You've got to want to do it and you can't have a fear of getting picked off or thrown out, all right? Do your homework. If you want to be a good base stealer, you have to do your homework. And what I mean by your homework is you need to obviously watch the picture. You want to get their times to the plate. You want to get their tendencies. Do they hold the ball for certain times? Do they pick off only in certain situations? Do they have a slide step? Do they have a high leg kick, which means they're slow to the plate? And this is all stuff that you can pick up individually by doing your homework when you're on the bench and then sharing it with your teammates, okay? The more information you can gather, the better decisions that you can make. Aggressive leads. You have to have aggressive leads. If you want to be a base stealer, you've got to have aggressive leads. This was one thing that I really noticed in Bendigo, observing the playing group for the first time. Our leads are very, very tentative, and that relates back to your mentality. If you've got a mentality you're going to get picked off or you don't want to get thrown out, you're going to have very, very poor leads and you're not going to give yourself a chance to steal a base. Hard to steal second if your foot's on first, okay? Pretty simple. Oh, we got a chat already. Okay, yep, no worries. All right. Now, the next aspect is stealing bases, as far as stealing seconds concerned, is a simple mathematical equation. All right, your stolen base time versus the pitcher and the catcher. So the pitcher's time to the plate plus the catcher's pop time will give you a time, and it's simple maths. If your stolen base time is quicker, you can steal the base. If it's slower, you're probably going to stay at first, okay? And that's why you'll see, managers, third base coach, first base coaches carrying stopwatches. All they're doing is getting times. It's something that I'll talk about later with you as an individual player, but you should know what your stolen base time is. If you don't know it, you're a step behind already. All right, so that's something that you should know. And then lastly is situational awareness. And what I mean by that is understanding the situation of the game. There are times in a game, if you're down by 4 or 5 runs, you need to conserve outs. So essentially, you put the stolen base in your pocket. It doesn't come into the equation. If you're ahead in the game, you can be more aggressive. All right, so then you can be more aggressive as far as stealing bases. There are times, especially if you've got a left-handed hitter up, with a left-handed hitter and the first baseman holding the runner at first, for example, the 3-hole is now open. So we might want to be able to keep you at first base to allow the hitter to utilise the 3-hole, especially if it's a left-handed hitter who likes to pull the ball on the ground. The majority of lefties do. So just things like that. There's situational awareness that you need to have. And it also relates to managing and coaching, is understanding those situations. But there's some aspects that you have to think about. Another example is if you've got a really good hitter at the plate and you're at first and you steal second, first base is now open. That now gives the opposition manager the opportunity to potentially walk that hitter. So by you stealing second, you might take the bat out of the best hitter's hands on the team potentially. So that's something that you have to think about also. There's times where we might want you to stay at first, just so the 3, 4, 5 hitters who might be hot at the time, we want them to swing the bat. We don't want them to, the opposition to walk them and take the bat out of their hands. Specific factors. Okay, so what I mean by this is this is in relation to the Women's World Cup and some of the homework I've done around it. All right, so the average time to the plate is generally around 135 to 1.4. Now that some are quicker with slide steps, but that's a general time across all the games I've watched and the teams that I've done some scouting on. That's the general time to the plate. The average pop time for catches is generally about 2.50. Okay, that's average. Some are quicker. You know, the Japanese catcher was about a 2.25, 2.3. Some are slower. Some are 2.65, even up to 2.7s, 2.8s. Okay. So if you take the two averages, we're looking at a stolen base time of 3.85 to 3.90 as an average. Okay. So keep that number in mind, because how that relates to is, one thing you would have noticed in Bendigo was that we did a stolen base time. And the reason for that is so that I can gauge what your stolen base time is and relate it to that total time. Now, if you, like I said before, if you don't know your stolen base time, you better learn it and you better get it down. Okay, so I'm talking from a 12-foot lead, 78 feet from first move, slide into the base. What's your stolen base time? If you know your stolen base time, then it becomes that simple mathematical equation again, where it's your time versus the pitcher and catcher combined time. And if your time's quicker, you can steal the base. If it's not, you're probably going to stay at first. Okay. So we're going to go into stealing second base now. Okay. So we'll move on here. So leads at first. Now listen, we covered this in the presentation last week on base running, but we'll just go through it again. First of all, before you get your lead, you want to go through that BOZO acronym, all right, which is ball, out, signs, outfielders. You can add the S at the end, or for BOZOs, check the scoreboard, all right, if the field you're playing at has a scoreboard. The technique we use is we start with our left foot on the base, and it's right, left, square up, and 2 shuffles. That's your primary lead. So that's the distance that you want to be off the base. The reason we use that footwork pattern there is that everyone's steps are different, okay? So I don't like to use, okay, for example, you don't have to get out to 12 feet or 15 feet, okay? If I was to do this, right, left, square, 2 shuffles, compared to, say, Shaquille O'Neal, he'd be about 3 foot, 4 foot further, all right? So that's why I don't like the distance. I like the technique as far as coming off the base. So you get to a position where you are comfortable and you know that you're aggressive enough to steal the base, but you can get back with a step and a dive. Fastest way between 2 points is what? It's a straight line. So we're always taking our lead on the line, okay? And in relation to our stolen base breaks, we want to have that stance alignment of your right toe in line with your left heel and slightly open. So as you can see in this picture here, if I drew a straight line from the heel, that right toe would be in line with the left heel, and the left toe would be slightly open, which allows this right hip to clear when you break. Okay, biomechanically, when you accelerate laterally, the front hip has to open to allow you to accelerate. You can't accelerate against it. It has to open so you can accelerate. And the key to that is having this stance and toe alignment correct. Okay. Break footwork. Okay. So, question, is it a crossover step or is it a directional step? It's actually a directional step first with the right foot, followed by the crossover. So a lot of people teach the crossover. The issue with the crossover is that, as I said before, biomechanically, you can't accelerate against your front hip. It has to open. So that means your right foot has to drop underneath you to create a directional step before the crossover step. Couple of verbal cues to think about. Keep your head under the rope. So a drill I used to do as a player in spring training with the Twins was we'd line up and we'd have two coaches hold a rope across in front of us, about 2 feet from our head, and it'd be at about, peak of your helmet, peak of your cap height. If you stood up, you'd neck yourself with the rope. So you'd have to think about staying under the rope. Another good one to help you accelerate and stay low is think about getting in as many strides before the pitcher lets go of the ball. So if you can think about getting as many strides in before the pitcher lets go of the ball, that'll help you stay low and accelerate. Now, versus a left-handed pitcher, the only difference is that obviously, like I went through last week, you want to keep your eyes on the pitcher. All right, so as you break, you don't break with your head down. You break with your head up and your eyes on the pitcher. And the reason for that is if they happen to pick, you can then move inside the baseline to get between the first baseman and the shortstop. So that throwing lane, you now can potentially get between that throwing lane, and the throw might hit you in the helmet, might hit you in the back, might deflect, keeps us from running into an out. Now, I'll just go here. I'm just going to play a little clip for you. This is Ricky Henderson, greatest base stealer of all time. And this was a great clip. I can't remember who I got this off, actually, but I want you to watch what he does here. His right foot will drop down and under, and his left foot will cross over to accelerate. So watch this clip. So the right foot drops under, right hip opens, left foot crosses over. Look at that, thing of beauty. Head to heel, as strong as steel. So that's a good little one to remember. Okay. Now, reading cues. There are different cues for different pitches. All right. And this is where we start to get into the next level thinking about base stealing. It's not just about speed. Okay. It's about reading cues. So first one is reading right-handed pitches. These are some of the things you need to consider or that are cues to help you get a better jump. First of all, stance width, narrow or wide stance. A narrow stance like this here, this is Josh Beckett, narrow stance, the front heel or the front hip will break first, okay? The front heel or front hip will break first. So look at the difference between this first picture and the second picture here. His body hasn't really moved, but this front heel is broken, right? So that's what initiates that move to the plate. If it's someone with a wide stance, you want to focus on this back shoulder here, because with a wide stance, the pitcher has to load back to go to the plate. So the first movement will actually be the back shoulder. All right, so you need to ascertain, does the pitcher have a narrow or normal width stance, or do they have a wide stance? You tend to see this wide stance in submarine pitchers. So pitchers that are sidearm or submarine tend to have a wider stance. Timing. How long do they hold the ball? Some pitchers will get into patterns where they hold the ball for the same time. They'll come set, 1,000, 2,000, pitch. They'll come set again, 1,000, 2,000, pitch. That's a cue that you can base off to get a good jump. The front shoulder alignment, open or closed. Some pitchers, so here, Josh Beckett, you see his shoulders are aligned to home plate. They're square. They're square, he's going to home plate. Some pitchers, when they pick, they'll get the sign from the catcher, they'll come up set, and this left shoulder will be slightly open. Okay, it'll be almost pointed towards, say, the left-handed batter's box or where the on-deck hitter would be. That's sometimes a cue of whether they're going to pitch or they're going to pick. Okay, so front shoulder alignment. And the last thing is front foot alignment. Exactly the same principle as the front shoulder, open or closed. So here, his front foot is square. That's a cue that he's going to the plate. Some pitchers, when they're going to pick, this front foot will be open. And the reason for that is that it aids in their ability to turn and replace their feet and pick off to first base. Okay, so that's a cue you can look for. Actually, I've just missed one because there is another one. It's weight distribution. So some pitchers will get the sign from the catcher. If they are pitching, they'll have their weight preset here on the back side. Okay, that sometimes is a cue for them that they're going to the plate. If they have their weight preset on the front side, that's sometimes a cue that they're going to pick. Okay, if that makes sense. The reason for that is if you preload your weight on the front foot, it's easy to then replace your feet. So when we teach a pick, it's right to left, left to target. All right, really quick feet. So that's another cue that you can look for. All right. I think someone up here had a question, I believe. What did you mean by moving in front of the line for a left-handed pick? Good question, Morgs. So I want you to imagine a straight line between first base and second base. If a left-handed picks and you do you fundamentally keep your eye on the pitcher correctly, you can see the pick. What you can then do is move to the inside of the line. So imagine if this is the line here where my cursor is, I can weave slightly in towards this grass dirt line, which then means that the throw from the first baseman to the shortstop is harder for this first baseman. I could potentially get between the first baseman and the shortstop, and the ball might hit me in the back or ricochet off my helmet. All right, so that's what I mean by, so this is a perfect example. Here he's picking in this photo, the left hand is picking off, or if he does pick. If I take off with my eyes up and see this, I can then move inside and get between the first baseman and the shortstop, okay? I can't move too far in, but I still have the ability as a base runner to create my own baseline. So once I go in here, that's okay for me to do, all right, according to the rules of the game. Some of you might have seen a little clip of a manager in the old ABL years ago throwing bases in the beer gardens. It was all over that rule. So very good question. So you have to understand that you are allowed to create your own baseline, okay? Is this going on first move for left-handed pitchers? Yes, that is correct. That is if you're going first move on a left-hander. Okay, so moving on, reading left-handed pitches. We have some of the cues. Head looks. A lot of pitchers will look at first base when they're going home, and they'll look at first base if they're going home, or they'll look at home plate when they're coming over to pick off. So they'll do opposites. Okay, that's a general cue. A lot of pitchers will do that. They'll look at first base if they're going to the plate, and if they're coming over to pick, they'll try and fake you out while looking at home, and then they'll come over. All right, so that's a cue that you can pick up to help with your reads. Shoulder alignment, open or closed, same as the right-hander. Square shoulders if they're going to home. All right, open shoulders if they're coming over to first. Foot position, in front or behind. So what I mean by that is this front foot. If the pitcher lifts their leg, a left-handed pitcher lifts their leg, if this foot crosses past this foot here, they have to go to home plate. They can't cross over behind then pick. That would be a balk. They can only pick off to first if this front foot stays in front of this plane of the back foot here and the pitching rubber. So that's something that you can pick up. If they lift with the front foot behind the back foot, they have to go to home plate. If they lift their front foot in front of this plane, they have the option to go home or to pick off. So that's something that you can pick up in the dugout. That's a cue that you can use to help you decipher whether they're going to the plate or they're picking off. And then front toe up or down. A lot of pitchers will have a habit of when they're picking off to first, this front toe here of the pitcher will lift up towards the sky. So see how his foot, I know it's a bit blurry, but the angle of that foot is pointing up. That's a pretty good indicator that he's going to come over and pick. All right. If the front toe is down, pointing down, that's generally a good cue that they're going to go to home plate. Okay. Now listen, you have to keep this in mind. There's always exceptions to the rule, but these are just some things that you can think about in order to pick up these different cues that'll help you make a decision on reading the left-hander and whether you're going to take off or not. Okay. Now here's a couple of alternative steal techniques of second base. So these might be new to some people. These are just some alternatives that, you know, I picked up over the years talking to various coaches, etc. All right. One's a shuffle or a timing steal. All right. And the other's obviously a delayed steal. I'm sure everyone would have done a delayed steal or been instructed on a delay, but maybe not necessarily on a shuffle or timing steal. All right. So Abby Mack, this is for you. All right. So a shuffle or timing steal. So generally for base runners with below average speed, okay? And the reason for that is that you use it as an element of surprise, okay? The opposition, they don't think you can run, they switch off, they don't pay you attention, and you can use it as an element of surprise to take the base. Generally, it revolves around the pitcher's timing. So if you've picked up the cue that the pitcher holds the ball for the same time before they deliver to the plate all the time, then this is where you can implement a shuffle or timing steal, okay? It essentially uses the shuffle to gain momentum, okay? So shuffle is before they start going to the plate, and it helps you gain momentum so that when you get your jump, all right, you've got better acceleration.
Gets you to that balance point.
Exactly.
Balance.
Exactly.
Hitting, you have to be able to be balanced to make that good contact swing. Same thing as pitching.
Andrews steals second. Mauer with a high.
So as you can see there, I'll replay it again, but before the pitcher delivers a ball, you'll see the base runner shuffle. He's creating momentum, all right? He's got the pitcher's timing, and bang, off he goes.
Gets you to that balance point.
Exactly.
Balance.
Exactly.
Hitting, you have to be able to be balanced to make that good contact swing. Same thing as pitching.
Andrews steals second. Mauer with a high.
Okay. So that's probably a question. I thought we'd get questions on these. Does that mean you start your primary lead a little smaller? Good question. Yes, you can do that. Okay. So you can start your primary lead a little bit smaller. And then if you feel that you have that cue, that you have the pitcher's timing, you can shuffle, and take off. All right. So this for me is about comfort. All right. You have to have the cue. You have to be 100% trusting that you've got the cue. You know, yep, they're 1,000, 2,000 pitch, or they could be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 pitch. Whatever timing it might be, trust that you have the cue. Get to a primary lead where you're comfortable, and then you can utilise a shuffle or timing steal to get yourself a better jump. Okay? Good question, Abs. Now, if I can go to the next one. So, shuffle or timing steal cues. What are we looking for? Pitcher that holds the ball for the same time. Okay, covered that. One other thing, same number of head movements. So some pitchers will come set, and they'll nod their head a certain number of times before they deliver the ball to the plate. So I've seen guys in the ABL, in my time managing the ABL, where they'll come set, they'll give you a little, you know, head movement, pitch. Once you know you've seen the second head movement, then you can get your shuffle and take off. All right. And the other one is pick patterns. All right. So what I mean by pick patterns is that there'll be some pitchers that will give tendencies that they'll only pick in certain counts. They might only pick at certain times. And what I mean by certain times is that they might get the sign from the catcher and then only pick to first as they're coming up to the set. All right, the terminology we use is what we would call an early pick. Okay, so that's something that you can look at is pick patterns. Some pitchers will only pick. They'll only have an early pick in their repertoire. So when they're coming up after getting the sign and coming to the set, they'll pick. So you know against a pitcher like that, once they come set, they're not going to pick. So you can shuffle, bang, get your timing, off you go. Delayed steal, majority of people, I'm sure, would have done a delayed steal. I'll premise this clip here by saying this is not a really good. Well, it's a good example of the technique, all right? But if the second baseman in this clip actually catches the ball, he'd be out by 3 metres. But I just wanted to more so show the technique, okay? So delay steal, again, more so for below average speed runners. One thing I will say with the delay is that it's also an excellent tool for base runners that can really run. And the reason for that is that most managers will be very, very cognizant that you're a good base stealer and they think that you're going to go as in a straight steal. So you can use the delayed steal as a surprise tactic also. It helped me a lot personally as a player when I came back to Sydney and played in State League because I could really run. Everyone would pick off, slide step, pitch outs, etc. Really hard to run on. So I added the delayed steal in my repertoire because when I took my secondary, everyone was, oh, okay, he's not going. And then you end up picking the pocket of a lot of teams. So it's also a really good tool for base runners that can really, really run. Again, it's an element of surprise. All right, so this is the surprise tactic. It's based off your secondary lead. All right, so your secondary lead has to be the same all the time. I think we discussed that last week, is you want your secondary lead to be consistent and the same all the time because that will allow you not to tip off when you're doing a delayed steal, okay? That's the key. Don't panic. A lot of base runners give away the delay by changing their secondary. They panic. They make their shuffles bigger. They do it at a faster tempo. They try and gain more ground. They're all tips that you could be possibly doing a delay. All right. So here's an example of a delay. Just want you to watch the technique around first here, okay?
Okay, Molina didn't get beat on it, and Piggins just couldn't catch it.
Sean's really having a tough game.
Okay, Molina didn't get beat on it, and Piggins just...
So there's a couple of things in this clip. You'll notice 2 good shuffle steps. His secondary's the same. He takes off, right? What you'll notice there's a bit of turbulence in the air tonight, all right? That ball just took a bad hop in the air, and the second baseman clean missed it. And if you're a second baseman or shortstop on this call, don't do what that guy just did, okay? That is not advisable. What we've got to chat, we've got a question. How dare he betray Molina like that? Correct. All right, delayed steal cues. All right, so what are you looking for that can help you, give you a good time? So essentially what cues you're looking for to help you make a decision of when it's the right time to do a delayed steal, okay? 1, catchers who stick and hold the ball. So a lot of catchers will catch the ball and stick it to give the umpire a good look. If you get a catcher that does that for an extended period of time, you can delay on them. Catchers who drop to their knees. This is an example. I'm not sure if anyone knows who this is. This is Adley Rutschman. He was just the #1 draft pick in the draft last year with my team, the Orioles. I do not advise catchers are doing this because this is a cue for a delay. Catchers who drop to their knees. A lot of catchers will catch the ball, drop straight to their knees to throw the ball back to the pitcher. They're now vulnerable to a delayed steal. A cue, middle infielders, their distance from the base. All right, if middle infielders are playing a long way towards the 5-6 hole, the 3-4 hole, okay, the distance from the base, now it essentially becomes a foot race between you and the middle infielder. So that's a cue for a delayed steal. If they're playing a long way from the base, you can delay and beat them to the bag. Middle infielders not covering. So what I mean by that is that good middle infielders, once the catcher catches the ball, whoever has coverage, they should take 1 good, hard, aggressive step to the base with their eyes up to defend the delay. That's why middle infielders, you'll hear me all the time say, heads up delay, heads up delay, heads up delay. And that's me reminding you, good, hard step to the base with your eyes up. If you see middle infielders, what a habit middle infielders will do, because they're used to, maintaining their area of infield dirt with their cleats, once the catcher catches the ball, if there's nothing happening, a lot of infielders will drop their head and start to, do their gardening. Once they drop their eyes, they're prime for a delayed steal. Okay, so this is something to look for. Middle infielders who are not covering the base, they're showing poor coverage and they drop their head. And the thing with a delay steal too is pick your times. A real first and third is a really good delay steal opportunity. And the reason being is that if you delay, a lot of catchers panic and they'll throw the ball to second without checking the runner at third. Therefore, they're very, very vulnerable to a double steal, first and third double steal. So first and third delay is a great play. And the other one is if we really, really need you to get into scoring position. So we might have 2 out. Essentially, with 2 out, the bunt's taken out of the equation. Hit and run's definitely taken out of the equation. And if you're not a real stolen base threat, a delay steal might be our only or best opportunity for you to advance into scoring position with 2 out. Remember last week, what's one of the golden rules of base running? You're trying to get to second base with 2 out. Okay, so those two situations are really prime opportunities for a delay steal. Now we're going to move on to stealing third base. Okay, so you might have heard the analogy or the saying, it's easier to steal third than steal second. My opinion on that, I 100% agree. The fundamentals of pitchers in conjunction with middle infielders controlling the running game at second in baseball in general is really, really poor. So we need to take advantage of that, okay? So our leads at second base, I'll go through that again. Again, we go through, our lead size at second base is bigger. The reason for that, you don't have anyone standing at the base holding you on. The technique we use, we go through bozo first. So ball out signs outfielders. Again, you can add the last S, which is scoreboard for bozos. The technique. So instead of right, left, square, you add 2 extra steps. So it's right, left, square up to the infield, then 2 shuffles. That should be your lead distance at second base. Okay. So right, left, square plus 2 shuffles. Okay. Hopefully we all know this. With none or 1 out, our lead should be directly down the line. Okay. The reason for that is we want to be as close to third base as possible. The quickest way between 2 points, straight line, especially with 1 out, because with 1 out, if you're trying to steal third, which is a prime time to steal third, okay, you want to be on the line with 1 out. With 2 out, 2 or 3 steps behind the line. Okay, so I think we should all understand that we want to be 2 or 3 steps behind the line where we've already created our arc so we can score on a base hit. All right. If we start getting further back than 2 or 3 steps, I want you to think of distance. The further I go back, that's the further I am off of second base. So now I am potentially in pick-off territory. All right. There is a technique which a lot of coaches use where they'll have the runners start way, way deep, almost near where the shortstop fields, and they'll gradually work their way in. Imagine if you're standing next to the shortstop, you might be 10 metres off the base. If you took a lead 10 metres straight down the line, do you think you would get picked off? Ask yourself that question. The answer would be yes. So distance is distance. It doesn't matter what angle you're on. Distance is distance. All right. So with 2 out, we only want to be 2 or 3 steps behind the baseline to start with. We don't want to be way, way back where the shortstop is. Okay. Our break footwork, stealing third. All right. The big difference between stealing third and stealing second is you have to create momentum stealing third base. Okay, you have to create momentum before you break. So it's essentially the same as a shuffle or timing steal that we just covered. So pitchers come and set, you've got your cues, all right, you're moving your feet, you shuffle, creating momentum, and then you break once the pitcher looks back to home plate if you've got them on head looks, or you break once their front foot lifts if you've got their timing. Timing is generally off head looks. Okay, so what I mean by that is pitchers will get in the patterns of how many times they look towards you at second. They might go 1 look at you, pitch, Some of them go 2 looks at you and pitch. Some won't even give you a look. And that's why we teach pitchers to vary their head looks with a runner at second. It's for this reason, because if you get in a pattern of the same head looks, the base runner can time that. And then when you're turning your head back to look at home plate, they'll get their momentum, get their shuffles in, take off, and they've got the base stolen. The other thing you can do to help you steal third base is gain ground on verbals. And what I mean that's verbals from the third base coach. So a lot of coaches at third base are not very vocal, all right? A good third base coach will give you verbals. Okay, okay, okay will mean that none of the middle infielders are paying you attention. If you hear okay, okay, you can creep and gain ground. That now shortens the distance between you and third base. That gives you a better chance to try and steal the bag. All right. So essentially, you cannot steal third base flat-footed. You've got to be able to gain ground and create momentum. So that's something that good third base coaches will help you with. Is if there's no one paying you any attention, a good third base coach will raise your alertness by going, okay, okay, okay. That is a verbal cue for you that you can gain ground and then steal third base. All right. I'm not sure if this is going to work. I don't think it's going to work. That's all right. Gain ground on verbal. I've done that. Sorry, I clicked the wrong one. Didn't work. We'll go through that later. Okay, reading keys when stealing third base. So these are some of the cues to stealing third base you want to try to pick up. First one, pitcher's head looks, like I just mentioned. Okay, so pitchers will get into a pattern of coming set. They might look at you once, turn back to the plate and pitch. All right, and they get into a pattern of doing that. Or 2 looks, or whatever the amount of looks is, they'll get into patterns. Okay, that's a cue that you can steal third base off. Middle infielders that are lazy, we just covered on that briefly in the previous slide. They don't pay you any attention. They're fielding a long way. The third base coach is giving you good verbals. Okay, okay, okay. You can gain ground and you can steal the base. All right. And then the last one is the catcher. If you get a lazy catcher that's only giving 1 sign or 2 signs and you get their sign sequence, you can steal third base on breaking balls. Okay. So that also applies to first base. If you can break in and get signs, but if you can get signs, if you've got a lazy catcher, all right, that's not really good with giving their sign sequences. They might be given 1 sign, might be just use first sign, last sign, etc. Really, really easy sequences to decode. Then we can take advantage of that and steal third base. And then one I've added here, which I don't know if any of you have seen this before, but it's actually a delayed steal of third. Now, this has become more prevalent because of shift defenses. So before I go through the cues to this, I just want you to look at this diagram. So imagine you're at second base. Now, there are teams that will still put shifts on against left-handed hitters with the runner at second, right? So third base is vacant. So a delayed steal of third now really comes into play where it's a foot race between you and the shortstop who gets to the bag, okay? So some of the cues to this is obviously it's generally only done in shift positioning against a left-handed hitter, okay? That's a good time that you can do it. Generally, if the third baseman's playing in the 5-6 hole, all right, so obviously with the shift, the third baseman will go across. Some teams will have the defensive alignment of the third baseman playing, straight up shortstop. Some, generally with a runner at second, they might favour over here in the 5-6 hole to try and defend you potentially doing this, okay, or defending against a push bunt. But generally, it's when the third baseman's playing in the 5-6 hole. If the third baseman is playing straight up shortstop and not holding you, then it's just a straight steal. You don't need to worry about a delay. And the technique's the same as how you would do it to second. So it's essentially, you've got your lead, pitcher's going to the plate, their front foot's going down, you take your secondary, couple of shuffles, and bang, off you take. And then it becomes a foot race between you and this third baseman here who's playing in the 5-6 hole. All right? Not something that you see a lot, but definitely something that is doable if we play against teams that are in the shift. And the key to all of it, your secondary has to stay consistent. All right, so I think we covered that at first. If you are changing the tempo of your secondary, if you are trying to gain more ground with your secondary, if you are jumping higher in your secondary, they're all cues that are giving away that you're trying to delay. 2 shuffles and break. Okay, stealing home. Now, again, another aspect that you might not have done before or covered. It's not something that is done all the time, but it 100% is something that can be done. Okay, stealing home. Again, just going through leads because it all relates. At third base, the distance off the bag, all right, the same distance as the third baseman, is playing from third base. You go through the BOZO acronym again, ball out, sign outfielders. You can add the S there for scoreboard if your field has one. Now the technique with your secondary, all right, right, left, right, plus the shuffle. All right, that gets your right foot down on time. We covered that last week. Right foot timing is important. Okay, obviously we want our right foot to land as the ball reaches that grass dirt line in front of home plate. Okay, so break footwork. This is if we're trying to steal home, okay? So, first thing, if you're going to steal home, we need to have some sort of sign to give to the hitter that we're going to be stealing home on that pitch. And the reason for that is safety, all right? I hope that we all haven't seen it, but I definitely know I have, where I've seen a runner try to steal home with a right-handed hitter. No sign, and the guy swung the bat, and ugly. All right, so it's important that if you're going to steal home, we have as a team, or you have as an individual to that hitter, some sort of sign to acknowledge that you're going on that pitch, and the hitter needs to acknowledge back so that they can get out of the way. It's generally done against a pitcher who is in the full wind-up. Okay, and then again, it gets easier against a left-hander because the left-hander has their back, all right, facing you. All right, they can't see you as well as a right-hander. Okay, this again relates to one thing that it's mandatory, absolutely mandatory in my teams. If the runner's in scoring position as a pitcher, you pitch from the stretch. Okay, you never ever pitch from the wind-up with runners in scoring position. That's second or third base. Second base, obviously not, even loaded bases. Because if you go from the wind-up, you're just inviting the opposition to potentially steal home. All right? And that, to me, is not competing. That's giving them a chance. You always pitch from the stretch. I'll have people say that, pitch from where you're more comfortable. If you can't pitch out of the stretch, you can't pitch. Simple as that. If you're at this level and you can't pitch out of the stretch, you can't pitch. Okay? So that's the reason why, okay? So from a base running point of view, you want to look for pitches that are in the full wind-up if you're at third base, and it's a lot easier against left-handers. It's like stealing third. You've got to create momentum, so you want to walk. So you just casually walk down, all right? You're creating momentum, all right, before the break. And then the timing is when the pitcher takes their little step back, or a lot of pitchers with a runner on third, if they're in the wind-up, will look at you, then they'll come back to home plate. They are the 2 cues to when you take off if you want to steal home. All right, so when the pitcher takes a little step back, or after they've looked at you, they look back to home plate, you take off, all right, they go through their wind-up, and there's really no chance of throwing you out. Okay. And that's it. Questions. All right. So I will stop the share. Now, does anyone have any questions? If you do, just put them in the chat section there. Is there anything I didn't cover that you would like me to cover in regards to base stealing? There was one section I didn't cover it, which we can go through, and that is sign stealing at first base. All right, and I don't mean with video cameras. I'm not talking Houston Astros. I'm talking you get your lead, and there's a little technique where you can look at, when you get your lead, you can look at the middle, middle to front section of the mound and still see the pitcher, and you can move your eyes backwards and forwards between that spot and home plate, and you can pick up catches signs. So that's next level advanced stuff that we can look at implementing or working on. Around the world, especially in Western style baseball, we generally tend to use the same signs. One's a fastball, two's a breaking ball, three slider, four changeup, etc. Same signs for picks, thumb and pinky and all that. And you can pick up signs. When you see a 2, a 3, or a 4, a breaking ball, you can then steal the base, because that adds a tenth. That adds about a tenth to the time. So if the pitcher's 1-4 to the plate, you see breaking ball, now they're 1-5. Okay, and you can take the bag. So that's probably one section I didn't include, which I apologise for not including, but it is a technique you can utilise to help you steal bases. But other than that, a lot of it is about mentality. If you have the mentality that you want to do it and you want to get good at it, you can steal a lot of bases. For me, I would rather you go 4 for 4 in stolen base opportunities than go 20 for 50. And people go, oh, he stole 20 bases. Yeah, but he got thrown out 30 times. It's 30 outs that we've just run into. So it's about picking your times and doing your homework and being efficient. So in this day and age, based with current analytics and offensive strategy, you need to steal a base at about an 85% success rate or more for that stolen base, okay, to be worth anything in regards to run expectancy. So if we're stealing as a group at less than 85%, 85%, we're running into unnecessary outs. We're actually lessening our run expectancy. Now, that might be a lot to take in, but that's based on current data and analytics, okay? So because the offensive philosophy has changed now to be more, it's either walks, strikeouts, home runs, or extra base hits. Okay, the stolen base has really gone out of the game because of analytics. And what that has done is put more of a focus on the success rate of the stolen base. If you're going to steal a base, we want to do it at the right time to where we're successful in stealing the bag. All right, we just don't want to run for the sake of running. All right, now, some teams are like that around the world. The Japanese just run like they're, stealing lollies out of a bloody lolly factory. It's ridiculous. They just run. But that's because no one can throw them out. Our pitchers and catchers working on controlling the running game, we're going to have a chance to throw them out. So now they might do us a favour by running into outs. A lot of the teams were very, very aggressive in the last 2 World Cups. I know we stole some bases. Venezuela ran like bloody, they were crazy. They ran like crazy. Japan ran like crazy. If it's there, if teams are slow to the plate and catchers can't throw, yeah, well, then we'll run like crazy too. We'll take advantage of it. But it's just about understanding the mentality of you want to do it, right, to be good at it. You have to have no fear, and you have to do your homework. It's all about stolen base percentage rather than the number of stolen bases that we have, okay? Lastly, the last thing I'll cover, which I didn't put in the presentation, and the reason I didn't is because I've been talking to you about this from day one, is if you want to be a good base dealer, you have to work on your physical tools. You have to work on your speed. You have to work on your acceleration, all right? If those aren't a big part of your game, then work on the technical aspects, such as a timing, shuffle steal, delay steal, reading cues, etc. All right, that'll help us become a good base stealing team, hopefully. All right. One question here from Morgs. Is there often a time that you would give a player a light, or do you prefer to put on a steal signal? Good question. Very good question. Right? In a tournament environment, it'll be a steal sign only from us. Okay. And the reason for that is that outs are precious. Now, my theory is if we were playing a season where we're playing 30, 40, 50, 100 games, I'd give you the green light and let you run until you show me that you don't know what the hell you're doing. So if I give you a green light and you were to run into 30 outs, I probably wouldn't let it get to 30. But if you just kept running and run into outs, then I'd take it away from you. Because what you're showing me is a lack of understanding of the situational awareness as far as making good decisions regarding stealing bases. Okay, so it's not a lack of trust as far as being in tournament play. I trust all my players, but I think that in tournament play we have to be aware that we only have a limited number of outs. And if I give you a green light without knowing your understanding of situational awareness and you take off and run into an out when we're down by 4, I'm going to scream. So for me, it's not about being in control, but it's just about giving us the best chance, I would suggest tactically, to win the game. All right. So good question, Morgs. That's a good question. It's a question that I get a lot about green lights. I've given green lights to guys when I managed in the ABL. And after 2 series, I took it because they'd run, guys that are 1-1 with the plate and a catcher that's got a 1-9 pop time and they're trying to steal second and getting thrown out by 30 feet. And to me, that's just mind-boggling. That just shows a lack of understanding of your craft. Cool? Hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Was any of that new to anyone? Just nod your head, yes or no. I'm not offended if it's not. Doesn't bother me. It's all about information. All right. So I'll send you the link to this so you can go back through it. If anyone wants any more information on the technique about sign stealing, let me know. And that, also relates to it second. I've got a little, it's not really cheating, but I've got a little system that we can use to help the hitters understand what pitches. If we get a sign sequence, pretty simple one. You get your you've got your lead. If it's a breaking ball off speed, you look back to the base. So you might look over this shoulder, back to the base like that. B, just think B for breaking ball. All right. And then if you look the other direction towards third, that's a fastball. All right. So you haven't done anything different. You just got your lead. And it's just, if you guess, you get the sign sequence. Yep, that's a breaking ball. Just little look there. That tells the hitter it's a breaking ball. And then we can go Houston Astros on everyone without actually using a camera. So not that I condone cheating, but if the other teams are dumb enough to do it, then you need to take advantage of it. So that's, why our system will be body touches plus signs. So it just keeps them off the scent. Cool? All right. Thank you for your time. I hope you got something out of it. If you've got any questions, please feel free to send them out to me. Happy to answer them, email, text, phone call, whatever. I'll send everyone this link. All right, so you can to this presentation, so you can go back through it again, and then keep your eye out. I'll start to look at implementing some more presentations over the coming weeks in regards to position-specific stuff. All right, I've got a hitting one. I've got some infield stuff. I've got some outfield stuff. I've got some catching stuff, pitching. Got a whole bunch of stuff. So I'll send out invites to positions and stuff. And please feel free to send that link or this presentation to other people. I am not concerned about, it's my information. I don't care. I just want to educate people. If you want to pass it on to people to help them, then pass it on. Okay. You only know what you know. And if you're able to pass it on to help other people, then that's great. Okay. All right. Thanks for your time. Have a good night, and I'll chat to everyone shortly.
Thanks, Pops.
Thanks, Pops.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pops.
You're welcome. Have a good night.